Hi, welcome to my channel where we question everything. Today's topic is bits and pieces, and we're gonna do a look at envisaged power blackouts in Europe and the power grid in Ukraine, and compare it to our South African experience. I thought it would be an interesting subject because we just been half an hour ago we had a 2-hour blackout, and that is going to be the second for the day, and tonight we're going to have another 2 hours of blackouts, nicely between I think 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock, so the nice time when you want to watch TV and so on, and especially the FIFA 2022. But oh well, let's make the comparison. In any case, you should be aware by now, if you have followed my YouTube channel and if you have watched the other YouTube channels, that there's a huge energy crisis in Europe, and electric power generation is a problem. And well, they all expect a blackout in Europe during this winter or shortly after the winter. You should also know that according to dubious sources, the 40% of the Ukrainian power grid has been destroyed, but they don't really specify which part has been destroyed. If you look at the Russian comment articles and so on, and the comments that were made by the Russian leadership, they only do target military targets and not civilian infrastructure. And if you have to consider that, then you have to consider that they've focused on the power structure for the train service, which conveys armament and logistics supplies and weapons to the front. But if I judge it correctly, and if I look at South African circumstances, then they destroyed the nodes, and the nodes are usually the power substations, where the high voltage from the distribution network, those big overhead lanes that we usually see, being brought down to whatever lower medium voltage is required for the train system and also for domestic use. And if we assume that the Russians haven't really targeted civilian infrastructure, then these substations will go down to 220 volt, maybe, I don't know, but I think it's 220 volt in Ukraine for domestic use. And with 220 volt, you get three phase, which is 380 volt or 480 volt and so on, but that is just multiple lines of 220 volt running out of sync. Well, they're in sync, but they are usually 120 degrees apart. Yes, three phase, 360, 120 degrees apart. In any case, you know, sometimes it's very difficult to assess this data. People like to thumb suck amounts, so I'm not sure if this 40% destruction of the power distribution network or electrical power system in Ukraine is 40%. I don't like round numbers. When I hear round numbers, I will give you a good example. If your daughter comes to you and says, "Listen, Dad, buy me this doll, it only costs you $10, then you said, oh, okay, $10 not that much. Okay, let's go buy the doll. And when you get to the shop, then you find out it's $19.99, nearly $20. Because they take the first digit and they make it a lower price to convince you and to commit you. And once you have committed yourself, then oopsie, you found out that it's a lot more expensive. And because it hasn't been specified how this 40% has been destroyed, where it's 40% of civilian structures or full 40% of the overall structure, infrastructure, or what percentage is really being destroyed useful for the population. But again, just to elaborate a little bit, gas is a big problem for Europe in order to generate heat and generate electricity. Well, that is what the common narrative is, but it's a false narrative. It's an exaggerated narrative. I made a video a couple of weeks back about the influence of gas. And if I refer to it back and we look at Germany, then 80% of all heating done in Germany is done by gas, 38% only. And only between 14 and 16% of power generation, meaning electricity generation, is generated by gas. So it's not that huge percentage of power generation in Germany done by gas. So it shouldn't have that big an influence, or call it a dramatic type of influence. And the Germans have now restarted some of their coal-fired power stations, and they have extended the life of the nuclear power stations. So it shouldn't be that bad. France, unfortunately, had a different problem. Half of their electricity generation was basically out of commission for maintenance. France depends mostly on nuclear power. And basically, well, most of the power stations should be coming online again by the end of December. So it has now an influence on power generation. And just remember, Germany would borrow or purchase electricity from France if needed, and France will purchase electricity from Britain or England or Netherlands or Spain or wherever. But they're all interlinked. And basically, they all sell power back and forth. So if the one has a lower load and the other one has a higher load demand, then they can supplement each power generation. So it's a little bit of a lot complicated. But in any case, and they even export to Ukraine, by the way. They do sell electricity to Ukraine from the outside of Ukraine. In any case. So let's start off with our comparison. And, well, if you don't know it, South Africa is not in no state of war. We don't have a gas shortage. We don't have a real, basically, coal shortage. We have a shortage of nothing except power generation capability. That is all. Our utility company cannot supply the power that we need. And the reason why is that some of our systems are very old, and we have built new power generation capacity, but due to our corruption and due to our state capture, if you haven't heard of it, our government was so corrupt that it was captured by private institutions like the Guptas. You can search up about that if you want to read up. And in any case, so the power stations that they have built should have taken 3 years. It has taken 15 years, and they're still not fully operational. They have cost 3 times the original budget. And they are also breaking down. So we have new stuff which breaks down constantly, costs 3 times the price, and took 5 times as long to build than it should have taken. But in the meantime, all our old stations, coal-fired stations, have been neglected. A very low maintenance was done. And now, because of a lack of maintenance, they are consistently breaking down. That means load shedding. While in South Africa, we call it load shedding. If you are from Europe or America, you would call it blackouts. And I would like to show you a graph of the amount of blackouts. Sorry, let me rephrase it, put it in the European type of definition, blackouts. And here is a nice graph of the amount of hours we had since 2015, blackouts. So in 2015, we had about 35 days continuously. Not continuous, we had it intermittent, but if you calculate it, it's 836 hours total, and that translates into, if it was consecutive, it would have been translated into 35 days. And 2016, 2017, we had no load shedding or blackouts. And then in 2018, we started again. And now we are in 2022, and you can see this year alone, and this, remember, this graph was compiled in October. So we still have 2 months left until the end of December. We already had 2,400 hours. That translates into 100 days. That's a third of our year that we had no power. Now imagine that it runs how it affects businesses. And in our South African context, we have to supply our mines with electricity. We even export our own electricity, even if we can't afford it. But in any case, the bigger, and then we have aluminium smelters that we supply and so on. And in order to limit the amount of load shedding for the general population and general industry, they go and make deals with these high usage companies and ask them to shut down their operation and then compensate them for the loss of production. So in real terms, these amounts of 2,400 hours, 100 days, is not the total picture. It could have been a lot worse. Now think about this, compare that now to the envisaged power for Europe and the envisaged, the current blackouts in Ukraine. And here's a nice graph, an example on how it is calculated on what type of load sheddings we have. Now, as you can see in the bottom left, we have stages, stage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And these stages basically tell you how much, the more capacity, generated capacity our utility company loses, the higher the stages are. So if they lose, say, 3 gigawatt power units, then it goes up to, say, stage 1. If they lose 10 gigawatt, then they will have to enforce stage 2, which means more periods of blackouts. And in this case, it's the bottom. If you look at the bottom table, then you will see those are day 1, 2, 3 up till day 30 of the month. And it shows you on the left-hand side the hours that it would be basically blackouts. And then you can more or less estimate, well, you can schedule your own processes in order to mitigate the lack of electricity in your business or in your home. But the stages are basically accumulative. So if you have stage 1, then you have 2 hours off. If you have stage 2, then you have stage 1 as well, plus another period. If you are stage 3, then you have stage 1, 2, plus another period off. And then you start, they was usually about 2 hours, but then on stage 4, we get 4-hour sessions as well. But these varies from region to region. And in any case, that's more or less gives you an example, if you want, day of the month. And if you now have stage 7, then that would be in 1, 5, 4, 8 wouldn't be, but 3 and then 7. Those are the periods you would have been off. As you can see, stage 7 would have resulted in 3 sessions of 4 hours each. And that's lekker. Well, just think about it. For this year alone, we already had 100 days of that. Not 100 days, 100 days continuous, which effectively means I had nearly 90% of this year, we had at least one phase of load shedding. So we have at least lost 2 hours per day, 422, for 90 to 95% of from January to October. We don't experience the whole day in the blackouts. That's not what we experience. Each day we have a blackout of a minimum of 2 hours. How do you like that? And then Europe's going to complain, and then Ukraine is going to complain, and these guys are in a war, Ukraine. We are not even in a war. What the hell? In any case, so I thought just to intersect, in South Africa, we have about 58 million people, and we have a GDP of about $370 billion. 370 billion, that's the whole GDP. And we have an installed generating capacity of about, say, 58 gigawatt. And our connections or current access rate to electricity is 95%. And that is what, since we have this new ANC government in 1994, when the apartheid era government was terminated, the new government went on to an electrification project, and we increased our access to electricity a lot. So about 95% of the population in South Africa have access to electricity. And the urban is about 95%, and the rural is 92%. So we're fairly modern in that respect. But unfortunately, our infrastructure is getting old, and the new government was corrupt and couldn't build enough power stations. And when they built the few that they built, they had bad products, long overruns, haven't still been completed, and they're already breaking down, and then it's cost you 3 times the amount. The total new generation of electricity built in South Africa in the last 15 years was less than 10 gigawatts. And now it is estimated that we have to build another 58 gigawatt, which more or less means replacing the whole generation capability plus some more. And, well, South Africa doesn't have money. It just doesn't have money. They are wasting money on stupid projects. They are stealing money as much as they can. They are not doing their work as they should have done, and they're earning huge salaries, our government and state institutions. In fact, our salaries in our governments are higher than in the private sector. Just for the sakes, my daughter is a teacher, and if you work in the private sector at a private school, you might get a salary of between 15 and 20,000 rand, South African rand, that is comparable to about, at the current exchange rate, of about $1,050, maybe $1,100 a month. But if you work in the government schools, then you get nearly 30,000 plus rand per month. That is nearly 50% more than in the private sector. And you can go ahead and I will tell you a typical example is like in America, I think you have one general for 900 soldiers. In South Africa, we have one general for, I think, 240 soldiers. And each general in South Africa earns about more than R1 million rand per year, and plus benefits. And that's an exchange rate of 18. So make it a nice 20. So he's earning about, $50,000 in a year, more or less. But you remember, our cost of living is a lot less than in America, but not in every aspect. We do have expensive stuff as well. In any case, So I'm not totally sure how Ukraine is handling the power out, the blackouts. I'm not sure how it's going to influence Europe per se. But all I'm telling you is that, yes, there is cold. In South Africa, we have heat. Everyone has to ask yourself, which one do you prefer? I was been recently, a couple of years back, I went to Thailand. Thailand is very warm and humid, and it was about in April, and if I understand, that's just before the summer season. So we were still out of the summer, we was in spring, if you want to call it. And I was sweating the whole day. And you cannot live in Thailand without an aircon. In South Africa, the same. We are still in November, so still a part of autumn. Yeah, autumn. No, spring. We are now in spring. And our warm period will probably start in January. But we are already experiencing temperature of between 30 and 35 a day. And that is quite warm. And instead, for the Europeans, if they get cold, they put on a heater and we put on an air conditioner. And in winter, when we get cold, we don't have the same heating method than Europe. We use our air conditioner as a heat engine, and then we heat our sections. And most of the time, we don't even heat because it's too expensive. And so we put on some clothes, warm clothes, lie under blankets, etc., etc. And then in some of our places, it goes down to, on average, say 2 degrees a day or 5 degrees a day. In our high veld, it goes to an average of about, say, 9 and 10 degrees in the winter. I live in Cape Town. Here we go on average between 15 and 16 degrees. But it's cold because it's a wet cold. It's not the dry cold that you get with snow and so on. I was in Germany before, so I know I felt the same. I felt the winter. And it's not the same as in South Africa. South Africa, you have lower temperatures, no, higher temperatures, but it feels colder. Don't ask me why. Maybe because we have more rains or so on, and it cools down the air, and it's higher humidity than in Europe with the snow and ice and so on. In any case, so in our houses are not that good insulated than European. We don't have double glazing. We don't have insulation in our walls. We don't have insulation in our flooring. Sometimes we have insulation in our roof space in order to lower the heat, but that's about it. And then the last item I just would like to say, we had the cheapest, in the old regime, we had the cheapest electricity in the world, really. And I always say that electricity and power is the lifeblood of any economy. But for some other reason, due to corruption and so on, and all the losses that our utility company has done, they have raised the prices enormously over the last 27 years. But it's still a hell of a lot cheaper than in Europe. So I'll give you just the figures. In South Africa, you have a sliding scale for private use. So if you use, say, from 0 to 300 kilowatt per month, you pay, say, R1.60. That's about $1. But if you use between 300 kilowatt to 600 kilowatt, then you pay R2.60 for that. So that's about $1.50 a kilowatt. And if you use more per month, we are talking per month, then you go up to R3.60, and that's about $2 a kilowatt. And my usage in my home, it's me and my wife and my son, and we do run about 3 computers and air conditioners. I use about 850 kilowatt per month, which translates to about 3,000 Rand per month, which translates more or less in about $170 or euros per month. That is my electricity bill. Some people use a lot less. Some people use more. That's about it. And also the reverse, I have my own company, which I still run. And our industrial rates, so the electricity rates for our industrial companies is higher than for domestic use by the citizens. And we pay on average, we have even a winter rate and a summer rate. And in the winter, the winter rate is higher than the summer rate. Yes, it's higher. But I don't always watch that stuff, so I'm not totally sure. But in any case, so there you pay about, I think, R3.60 a kilowatt. That's, like I said, $2 a kilowatt. And in the winter, then you pay about R6 a kilowatt, about double it. So then you pay $4 a kilowatt. Why they don't do it, I don't know. Like I said, it makes South Africa highly uncompetitive if the energy prices are double than for domestic use. But it's apparently the reason for that is that the municipality think that they can earn tax from that. A big portion of that is actually profit for the municipality, which they finance then, and we still pay property taxes and stuff like that. But they use that as an income for the municipality or the metro. And they also say that the company can transfer the higher cost of electricity to its clients. So at the end of the day, the client pays in any case for that. So this gives you some idea of how it goes in South Africa. And now you can make an informed decision or informed review of what the Europeans can expect and what they are expecting or are experiencing. And you can also now think about how the Ukrainians are handling the matter. I don't think that 40% of the civilian infrastructure is destroyed. I don't believe that. There are some dual purposes of that, and if I have to imagine, and just imagine, then I think about maybe 10 to 15% of the civilian infrastructure was destroyed. The rest are all either factories that are supplied with make ammunition and stuff like that. Because just for instance, if you didn't know that, Ukraine was one of the biggest manufacturers of military equipment for the Soviet Union. So there's a lot of technology and military armament manufacturing capability in Ukraine. Well, it's 30 years later, so I'm not sure if that capability still is available, but they were one of the biggest industrialized military equipment manufacturer. And again, you have to ask yourself, where was it situated? Because the Donbass was an industrialized component of Ukraine. So I'm not totally sure where everything is distributed. But it's just like general information that you can use. So I thought that would be interesting. If you like what you heard, please subscribe, tell your friends, spread the word, and until next time, cheers.